Perhaps we can talk briefly about influences on your musical direction. Who would you say are the people who have spoken to you most directly in a creative sense?
Initially, the first contact with jazz in my early days was that Take 30 program, you know, the theme music, Take 5, of course. And from there, I expanded my tastes to people like Miles Davis, Wayne Shorter particularly. I got the Night Dreamer album and went crazy on that. At the time, I didn't know much about reading music as far as chord changes, reading jazz chord changes. So it was all by ear, but I thought that was productive. It developed my ear. I got to school, Grant MacEwan. I studied there. Started in 78, went off and on, and graduated in 85. And found out what it was to play chord changes properly, to read them, you know, and find out their inner depths, you know, beyond what just my ear was telling me.
There's that moment, I suppose, that point in your life where you stop playing music, you stop playing with Paul Desmond, who isn't there to there to react to your fluffs and to glow when you glow in the performance. When was the move to actually performing with other folks, actually doing it live?
Grant MacEwan. This was back in 78 when I first went there, and finally came out of the closet, so to speak, and started exploring relationships in music. Quite challenging indeed, and a lot of things to learn there. It's been ever expanding since, and in some senses that's what to me is so exciting about the space jazz thing that Ed Patterson and I have explored. There's only two people there. You've got just the two guys, so you can be quite intimate in your playing with each other. There's a lot more freedom because you can respond directly to one person and change your direction immediately if you want, whatever. We met in March of 88 and basically didn't say too much to each other, just sat down in front of the tape recorder, put the headphones on, closed our eyes, and started playing. In some ways, the space jazz is going back to my early days of just playing by ear, because I can just totally let go of all those mental gymnastics that are involved in reading chord changes and keeping yourself oriented to a specific form, so to speak. And yet, now I'm playing with someone else. The small combo. It's very mentally active. It demands a lot of focus, therefore a lot more responsibility. Mind you, of course, for the composer, which I'd be composing for this ensemble, there's a lot more freedom. I can voice things. I can get, whereas I can't really write things out for Ed to do. We're just responding to each other. It's free. There aren't, so to speak, compositions really evolving there.
Let's perhaps lead to the other mode, which is has been described as New Age. Now, what you're talking about is space jazz.
Yeah.
This brings to mind the notion of New Age music, which is, hey, spacey music, or apparently spacey music.
That's right.
How do you see New Age music?
Well, From what I've been exposed to, I like a lot of the sounds, the ambiences, as Brian Eno would suggest. But there seems to be a lot of material, New Age material out there that's very repetitive and tends to get perhaps hard to listen to for that reason if you want to listen to something. And in that way, the space jazz fits in the sense that it's relaxed, contemplative, but different to a lot of New Age material that I've listened to. I find the space jazz trip is more thought-provoking because we're always moving, we're always flowing into something new, something different. That's what space jazz is about for us, and where I find it differs from New Age because perhaps it's more interesting.
Yet New Age would be the tag you could put on some of the material and say white mud.
On the album.
Yes.
But a lot of that material was composed. It wasn't just repetitive rhythms, although one or two cuts have repetitive beds to them that I improvise over. That being the difference. There is jazz involved in that. There is improvisation.
Looking at the album, the cassette,
Yeah.
I've heard it on cassette, so I'm going to be hung, I think, with this idea of referring to it as a cassette. Right?
Yeah. Cassette.
Let's consider it from that point of view, the point of view of the directions your music has been taking. Does it represent a summation or an idea of what you're going to be doing in the future?
It's more of a summation of what I've done in the past, in the sense that it involves a lot of material that I've done by myself on guitar, all the things that I wanted to get out of my system on the guitar.
The guitar. Last I heard of that, you weren't playing it. You'd given it up in favor of playing the trumpet. So that's the implication.
Yeah, the guitar has been a major influence in my musical thinking, particularly when I compose something. But when I'm improvising, of course, I want to orient to the horn because it's a more direct, emotionally direct instrument and more emotionally expressive because of its connection with the voice, with wind, with breathing. So it predominates in my direction as far as a performing instrument goes.
Looking then at White Mud as a summation, that I suppose leads us to an obvious next question is, where do we go from here? Where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, on the second cassette album that I'm hoping to produce pretty soon, I've got some time at CJSR Recording Studio. I won a contest there last year. It's going to be primarily a jazz, more traditionally jazz-oriented album in the sense that I'm going to have several musicians I'll be working with in a small combo situation. It'll be all my compositions again, my original music, but in that more traditional jazz setting.
Jazz musician Mike Fijal. I'd like to point out that the studio time that he modestly says he has coming was the result of his winning the CJSR reel-to-reel competition last year. He impressed the judges with his, in their words, originality and musicianship, and he managed to pull down 20 hours of recording time at the station. Now here's Mike on flugelhorn again, along with Edmonton guitarist and frequent collaborator Ed Patterson. This is called And Life Goes On.